YouTube, how's it going? The GOAT House is back, and the franchise tag window in the NFL actually opens up today. It runs through March 8th. Teams could choose the franchise tag players anytime now, or they can wait to the last second. We'll see a mixture of it. Today I'm going to predict who will get the franchise tag. We'll also talk about the franchise tag number, the cap hit for those teams. Also talk about some other guys that are very strong candidates, realistic candidates, but why I'm predicting no tag for these franchise tag candidates. So we'll break it all down. There could be some surprises like last year. So I'm excited about this. We have full free agency, off-season content here when it comes to, again, free agency trades. We grade everything. The draft content, we got full draft content. So join us, like, subscribe, turn notifications on. Be much appreciated. I'll eventually grade the tags, the decisions on the tags as well. That'll probably be on March 8th when it all closes. So follow our Twitter. A lot going on there, talking numbers, talking, and like I said, anything involved with the NFL with you guys there. So check it out. Important links pinned in the comment section. Here's our Twitter. Again, we got polls with the numbers, and you guys are voting on what team should do with all these tag candidates. So a lot of talk on there. So check it out. First one, let's get through the ones I'm kind of considering locks. Davante Adams, star wide receiver from the Packers. Obviously, you see that's what would be the franchise. These are projections, too. It's very tough to project the exact number. But the $19.12 million is what's projected to be. Sometimes we don't really know until they actually, all right, the Packers are giving Adams the franchise tag. Then we figure out the number. Could be a little bit north. I've seen some people predicting both north and south this. I would not expect to be south of that number. I would not expect that. But could it be $20 million around that range? But I'm thinking around this range here. Yeah, it would make sense. The Packers in a hole cap space wise, so it makes sense to extend Adams and kind of backload that contract. Remember, if you tag a guy, you can work towards an extension. You got more time to do it. Teams can't take that guy, and you also can choose to trade him in somewhat the near future as well. So the Packers got a lot of figuring out to do with Aaron Rodgers and how they lay out these contracts, who they cut to clear cap space, because remember, they need to clear who they restructure because, again, they need to clear, but they can also push money back, which a restructure is, because they have future cap space. So in the meantime, I don't think you play around. I think you tag Davante Adams, figure out that situation, because if you don't tag him and then you allow him to get to free agency, some team makes a call to him, even though in his mind he wants to go back to Green Bay. Anything can happen. Even if he hit free agency, I wouldn't expect him to leave Green Bay, but anything can happen. Don't let it get to that point. You tag him. That's a lot of money, but it's a pretty damn good price for the Packers' sake for Davante Adams. Will Adams be happy with this? I don't know if I mean, he would want more money, but I don't know if I see him being too upset. They know the Packers situation. He knows the Packers situation. They want to work towards a long-term deal. So maybe he'd be a little upset if he ended up playing on that number. So we'll see. I'm expecting a tag there. Another guy I'm expecting a tag for sure is Jessie Bates. I mean, you see that number at 13, again, projected $13.544 million. Pretty good for the Bengals. Maybe Jessie Bates wouldn't be too thrilled about playing for that price because he arguably is one of the best safeties in football, and you see what those guys are getting paid these days, up to 16, 17, 18 million per year. So a little off there, but tag him, maybe work towards an extension. They were in extension talks before this last year. They couldn't really reach that. Maybe Bates was asking for a lot. The Bengals knew the tag was an option for cheaper than what he's asking for. So I'm expecting a tag, and we'll see if they – and I would expect them to work towards an extension to get him more money after that tag. It just kind of gives you that a bigger window and opportunity to do that, not let him hit free agency. So it makes a lot of sense to me. I would expect this from the Bengals. And again, if players aren't happy with it, that's never that great, but they don't really have a choice. It's not like they have to agree to it when during this period, during this window, which starts today through the 8th. It's just the team deciding if they're going to tag him or not. So we will see, but I'm expecting that one for sure. Another one I'm definitely expecting, Orlando Brown. Remember, he was traded from the Ravens to the Chiefs. He had a very good season for the Chiefs at left tackle this past year. That's a pretty good number right there, 16.698, again, projected in that range. It's a pretty good number for him, especially for tackle. I mean, for the Chiefs, I should say. So pretty good for tackles. It's pretty cheap. They would like another guy. He would like an extension long term. Would he be unhappy with this? It's a pretty good price still. But Yeah, the tricky thing is the Chiefs, a little low on cap space. They have ways to create cap space, restructure. Look at Mahomes, you can clear up to 21 point whatever million from his from restructuring his roster bonus alone. But what you do is you push money back, so you can clear money that way. You can make some obvious cuts, Hitchens maybe Frank Clark. So potentially the Chiefs can clear a lot of money. Do they do that to get even better so they get over that AFC Championship hump maybe? If you slap this tag of 16.698, that's going to, all of it's going to be a cap hit for this year, so that kind of affects that a little bit. My point is, you want to spend their free agency on that? They'll be able to do other things, or do they want to sign them long term, backload it, get new guys now? But they can create cap space. But this is one I'm expecting. When they traded for him, you would kind of expected maybe they because they traded for him. Let's get an extension done. They didn't really do that. I think they really had this in mind, so that's another good reason why you could expect a franchise tag for the Chiefs and Orlando Brown. Another one, Mike Gesicki. There's some talks about him going elsewhere. People have different views on this, and I see some people kind of getting on that Chargers hype train. Maybe he can go there, maybe Jacksonville, somewhere like that. I think the Dolphins like him. It is a new staff, but it's the same front office. The tag just makes sense to me. I'm really expecting it. 10.835. That's pretty decent price range for him. On a long-term extension, he probably would ask more. Would you be hesitant to pay that? The tag just makes sense because of that price range. You got a new staff come in there. Got to see if Gesicki fits it. Would you rather have a tight end that maybe a little better at blocking, even if you suffer in the receiving ability department a little bit? In that Mike McDaniel system, I think you tag him. It's kind of a trial. It's kind of a tryout this year. See if he's the guy. If he's the guy, you extend him. If he's not, you let him walk. You get a compensatory pick. So I guess if they don't tag him, it'd be interesting. If they don't tag him, do they think they're going to work out a long-term deal for cheaper? That'd be pretty cool. That'd be good. Do they overpay though? Or do they maybe what a lot of us be thinking if they don't tag him? Are they thinking he's not a fit? They let him walk. So it'll be interesting to see, but it just makes sense to me for the reasons I explained. I'm expecting both these tight ends to get tagged as well. Same price point we're projecting. Cowboys don't have a lot of cap space to work with, but they can find ways to clear it. And they want to keep Schultz around, so keep him. And this would actually be cheaper than what they would sign him per year, what he would be looking for. And the Cowboys are a little thin on cap space. We know that now, but in the future as well. So this would make the most sense to me. Get this done for now. Pay a little cheaper in the per year range. The problem is the full thing is a cap hit for this year, and they're negative cap space right now. So again, because if you get him a long-term deal extension, let's say yes for $12 million, so it's more than that. It doesn't necessarily have to be $12 million per year cap hit wise. You kind of can push some of that back. You could potentially make it like a $5 million cap hit. I mean, it's pretty low, but it's it doesn't have to be that specific number. When it's a franchise tag, that's the cap hit. So that's why it's a little tricky, but I think if he hits free agency, somebody could pay something ridiculous. You can lose him, and they value him a bit. So I'm expecting the tag for him from the Cowboys, but we will see how they deal with their cap space situation. A team to watch there. Won't expect a lot of new activity, bringing new guys in from the Cowboys here. Now we get a little. I'm predicting it, but we're stepping down a little bit on, I guess, my confidence on yes, they will be tagged. I'm still predicting these ones here, but that's why it's a little tricky because 17.295 in that range for the franchise tag for cornerbacks, and here Carlton Davis. It's pretty expensive. Now, Carlton Davis is a very good young corner with some upside. That is pretty expensive, though, but I am expecting it. The Bucs, I think you tag him. They got some work to do. They're going to free some cap space from Brady's retirement, but not till June 1st. Work around that. Who do we restructure, push money back? What do we do with Godwin? We'll talk about him later in this video. Do we backload his contract? Who do we resign? Because we got loads of free agents. We're gonna have to let some key ones go. We're gonna have to pick which key ones we bring back. A lot of work to do for the Buccaneers. I think you tag Carlton Davis for now, not let things kind of get out of control, and then he goes and signs elsewhere, because there's some teams out there that'll pay corners for some reason. It's a stupid amount of money, more than this maybe. But per year basis, maybe you can get him a little bit less than this, which would be ideal for the Buccaneers. But I think you tag him for now, kind of work on an extension. Maybe that could clear some space now, push some money back. But the Bucs definitely value him. They would like him back. J.C. Jackson's a tricky one too, because last season they slapped a second-round tender on him, which is basically you're going to get him back unless a team takes him. And when they take him, you get a second-round pick in a second-round tender. But the Patriots pay a small amount to do that. So that tells me, that was almost telling me, I don't know how much they value J.C. Jackson. They were almost daring a team to take him. They get a second-round pick, and they were obviously going to be okay with it. I think they would rather have J.C. Jackson, but for them doing that, I believe they were okay. Like, okay, we'll get a second-round pick here. We don't have to pay him the big money. So that's interesting. Do they want to pay up? Do they want to pay up this franchise tag? Do they want to pay up the long-term deal? Obviously, he had another fantastic year. Was it any better than last year? Maybe a little bit. They did get rid of Gilmore in between that time, now and then the last time they tendered J.C. Jackson. So it is a little tricky. What's their views? My thinking is, yes, this is a little pricey for Bill, and the Patriots for them to love it. But they can't really afford to lose J.C. Jackson right now. I don't think they're going to give him around this range, even if it's a little cheaper in terms of a long-term extension. I think they're very cautious with those things. But I think they need him for now. I think they're going to tag him and, see how it plays out this year. And then, if they lose him for a compensatory pick, then, maybe that's okay with them. They've kind of been known for that in the past. But, yeah, tag for now. It's interesting one, though, just because what they did last year, and they were somewhat okay with the fact of maybe losing him and getting a second-round pick and a tender back. So we'll see how they value him now. We'll see how much change. They're a little thin on cap space, too, and they definitely want to get better here, obviously, take that next step. So, again, it's a very interesting one. Next up, Marcus Williams, which I was originally thinking he would probably go elsewhere right when we hit the offseason. I'm like, could they tag him again? Could he go elsewhere? Could a team like the Lions pay up big money? Lions, Eagles, Texans, seems like that. I could see it. The Saints are obviously in a bad cap space situation like they were last year. Now I'm starting to think it's possible, though. We know the Saints will. Every team that needs to clear space, they'll have to. You have to get down to at least zero, even there. And they'll do that, and they actually can tag Marcus Williams in the meantime while they work all that out. And then work on maybe a deal with him. Because you look at the price range for the safeties. I think that's around his value range, but it's a pretty good deal for the Saints. If you were to extend him long-term, let him hit free agency. Somebody may give him more than that. Can the Saints do it? Ideal for the Saints is to kind of backload things because they're very thin on cap space right now. They're usually a team that they don't really worry about the future right now. If you understand what I'm saying, they kind of worry about today. They kind of worry about it's kind of their philosophy there. So, they may tag him, work on an extension. So I'm starting to think the tag's going to happen here with this one. It's interesting because it would be a second tag in a row for Marcus Williams here, obviously. Usually when a player gets tagged a second time, it would increase 20% based off the previous year. But that would actually be less than this tag number, and that's because other players are getting paid so much. The cap space is risen, obviously. So he'd actually get more money just from the normal tag, which is pretty interesting. But which would be that price range, obviously. So I'm expecting the tag. It's one where the Saints, maybe. Well, and you got Malcolm Jenkins, maybe his career coming to an end. Saints got to clear space. Do you want to lose your kind of a franchise type safety here? So that's kind of why I'm thinking they tag him there. We'll see how they work their way through the cap space. Everyone's gonna figure it out. I'm just curious to see how they actually do it. Next up, Harold Landry. Yeah, it's a tricky one too. $17.417 million is quite a bit, and kind of a flaw in the franchise tag is there's no edge. There's no edge franchise tag. It's defensive end and outside linebackers. I think it's a flaw because it depends on scheme. Titans run that's why it's really flawed, because the Titans' base is 3-4, but they rarely really look like a 3-4. They switch it up a bit. Maybe times they look more like a 4-3 even. But But technically he's listed as a linebacker because in a 3-4 scheme, the edge rusher is an outside linebacker. So linebacker franchise tag, why it's flawed, is linebacker franchise tag is less than defensive end. I think that's pretty bad on the players there. Sometimes players argue, they try to get Players Association involved, and they try to get, in this case, if Landry would do that, he would try to get defensive end money, which would be like $20 million. We'll see if that happens, but this is what the price range would look like to 17.417. Ideal. Titans extend him. They backload the contract. That'd definitely be ideal. It's a little tricky though. Again, I think team tags him for now. They try to work towards that extension. He's shown promise, upside in the past, but he's had one this year really good year. So in these situations, I can see kind of the player and the team kind of be on different pages. So the tag, kind of having that trial run, it makes a lot of sense too. So I'm expecting a tag. It is a little tricky one. If they were to extend him, could it be cheaper than 17.417? Could they backload it to help him clear space now, or not clear space, save space now, which the Titans need? So I am predicting it to happen, though. We will see. A lot of these recent ones I did, they're a little interesting. There's always going to be a kind of a surprise one. Here's some realistic candidates that I don't think will get tagged. Chris Godwin. Remember we talked about Carlton Davis. I predicted Carlton Davis to get the tag. Team can only use one tag per year, obviously. Chris Godwin, I don't think will happen because I think they would rather extend him for. It's tricky though, because I was going to say, could they extend him for less? You see that price range. So he was tagged last year, so he gets 20% raise off last year. That ends up being more projected in the receiver tag. And this receiver tag could be more than I think, could be around $20 million. It's definitely possible. But they potentially could save money by long-term deal for Godwin, tag Carlton Davis. Maybe the opposite. Maybe a long-term deal for Godwin, the tag for Godwin if it's sitting at this range, and a long-term deal for Carlton Davis, which maybe they get under the tag. So it's definitely debatable here, but this is kind of what I'm feeling right now. But it is going to be very interesting to see how the Bucs approach this. With these two players that are tag-worthy, extension-worthy, with their limited cap space, with their loads of free agents, with their no Tom Brady, retiring, be very interesting here. Another receiver, Mike Williams. This is one where the Chargers can't do it right. I just don't see how it's be. I know it's only 1 year, and it kind of makes sense to give him a trial because he's had one really big year. Kind of got to see if he could step up, catch the ball a little more consistently, get more separation consistently. So the 1 year trial would make sense before you extend him. But this is a big time overpay, in my opinion. It is a big time overpay for Mike Williams here. So that is kind of why I'm projecting the no tag. But they could do it because, again, maybe they would rather overpay and have that trial run where we can wait and see if we want to extend him. But I'm going to say no tax. That's pretty damn pricey for Mike Williams. But that's an interesting. A lot of these ones are tricky, so I just can't wait to see what happens. Cam Robinson, this is one we all should be waiting to see what happens because the Jaguars hold the first pick in the NFL draft when the top players in the NFL draft are all tackles, and they may need a left tackle here. And then they could use another one, maybe Jawan Taylor, who I think still has upside. Maybe he hasn't really worked out for them like they plan, or the new staff doesn't like him. So maybe they want Cam Robinson and a tackle still. That's possible as well. I guess I just thought of that now. But, so if they decide to not tag Cam Robinson, are they working on extension and free agency, or are they just going, hey, we have the first pick. We know who we're getting. We're going to get that guy. We're going to get better at that position. Let him walk for that big price range so we don't have to pay it. Would make sense as well. I'm going to predict no tag. If they tag him again, which he was a surprise last year, it wouldn't be as much of a surprise. It may be a little bit surprised because then we're all going to be wondering, what are they drafting a tackle still? So it'd be interesting. 16.698 million would be the range for him. It is an overpay for him based on what he's done so far, but he still has upside. But when I factor in upside with price range, I don't know if it factors in a 1 year deal, which obviously the franchise tag is a 1 year deal. So more of a long-term deal at that price range would make a little more sense. And somebody will probably give him that around this number, 3-4 year deal, because they want to, hopefully hit on an upside franchise, like left tackle. maybe the Jaguars' new staff thinks they can work with him, but I'm thinking more they let somebody else pay the big money and they draft that left tackle of the future. You could argue, hey, we get Cam Robinson, we work with new staff, could work with him, make him better, help him reach his upside, his potential, and then we can draft something else and get even better, or draft another tackle. Load up. You could argue that side as well. So definitely one I'm very curious about here because the draft actually is involved with this one too in a way. And Quandre Diggs, no tag, coming off that leg injury, not a good one either. You might be able to get him for a little cheaper on an extension, maybe anywhere between 2 to 4 years. Yeah, I'm probably thinking in the middle of that. Maybe 3 makes sense. I think slightly cheaper, around that 13 to 13 point, even 5. That'd be cheaper and more of an extension like too. You can shift that money, have the cap hits wherever you would want them. Maybe you want to front load it because you have a lot of cap space. Maybe you want to back load it because you want to go crazy in free agency this year. It just makes sense to me. He is an important piece to that defense. Obviously plays free safety at a pretty high level while Adams is in the box. He's also familiar with playing different types of coverages, obviously, as well. So he's pretty damn important to them. I just think, yeah, he likes being in Seattle. Seattle likes him. I think they can extend him for a little bit cheaper in this, especially coming off that injury. I think he's a little underrated, though, so maybe some team thinks that as well, and they want him, and they pay something ridiculous for him. But I'm going to go no tag. So those are the guys I want to talk about. Other people would talk about Brandon Scherf, guys like that. He's not going to get tagged. We talked about it on Twitter. It's way, way, way too expensive. Not going to happen. Same thing goes for Chandler Jones, Jadeveon Clowney, Von Miller, Tyrann Mathieu. These are obvious. They're not even candidates in my mind. So they're just way too overpaid on the franchise tag, mainly because most of those guys already been tagged, so it increases quite a bit, obviously. So those guys weren't on my radar for this. So this period's going to be, from today through the 8th, March 8th, I believe it is. It's going to be interesting. There's a lot of ones that, you're just very curious to see what teams decide. The Bucs got some tough decisions that what the Jaguars decide with Cam Robinson because the draft pick kind of plays a part in that. Those corners are, those too pricey for those guys, Receivers, yeah, it's gonna be very, very interesting to see what teams decide. I'm thinking most teams kind of take their time on this because they don't have to decide right this second. So we'll see. Everyone will be different. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments. Again, Twitter's already talked about all these things, all the numbers, what everything means. We had polls on there for you guys. So breaking news, we talk about it instantly. My thoughts. Everything's on that Twitter. So if you're not following it, you're missing out. There's a link down below. It's @GoodHouseNFL. Like, subscribe, turn notifications on. We have full NFL coverage here, off-season content like crazy. So join us. Be much appreciated. It's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.